So let's start off with that big comparison, but I'm not going to tell you what it's all about. Take a look for yourself. In India, you have a very unique sub-4 meter subcompact sedan category. You have the Tata Tigor, the Hyundai Accent, the Ford Aspire, Volkswagen Ameo, and of course, the Maruti Suzuki Dzire. And now, Honda's refreshed its Amaze for an all-new avatar. Now, there is no denying the fact that the Dzire is the crown king of this subcompact sub-4 meter segment. In fact, in April 2018, Maruti Suzuki sold nearly 26,000 of these in the country. That makes it the highest selling sedan in the country by some margin. Now, both of these that I mentioned, sub-4 meter subcompact sedans, a category which is very unique to India, and both of them are exactly the same in terms of length. The Dzire is slightly wider, but both of these approach design in a very, very different way. The Dzire is a little more traditional with its big grille in the front and these big headlamps. The Amaze is a little, well, in comparison, bonkers. I think it's been designed by somebody who's obsessed with geometry in school, which is why you have a lot of right angles, a lot of flat faces. And to be very honest, that's the direction language that Honda has taken in the recent past. The Civic has a very flat front. It's got this big chrome piece, big chrome garnish like the Amaze does. And the Amaze sort of apes that design language, which is, of course, obvious. Now, in terms of spec, though, a lot of people have complained that the Dzire gets a little bit more, which we agree it does. In fact, it gets projector headlamps on the top of the line version. It gets LED bulbs also, whereas the Amaze just gets normal halogens. Now, that's something that definitely is a missed feature. But my biggest grouse with the Amaze today is that even though Honda has a history of making some really nice wheel designs, that is just plain boring. In comparison, of course, the Dzire gets that sort of diamond cut two-tone finish, which is, of course, the rave in the country today. But, well, they could have definitely done better with these wheels. Moving to the rear, though, again, as compared to the front, very different design languages. Honda, very flat, very edgy. The Dzire, very curvaceous. Both look much nicer than the last generation. And the Amaze, though, is a little bit more symmetric, a little bit more refined, a little more balanced than the Dzire is in terms of overall design. That said, I'm going to agree that design is something of a personal taste, a personal preference. So I'm going to leave it up to you to decide which one looks better. I personally still think the Dzire looks a little bit nicer, even though I agree that the Amaze is a little more balanced in terms of design in this segment overall. The difference in design on the exterior filters down to the interior too. The Dzire continues with that more rounded and upmarket look, while the Amaze is a lot funkier. Although both cars get a black and beige combination, the way they both use it is very different. While the Amaze uses more of the gloss piano black on the dashboard and the center console, the Dzire uses a combo of piano black and adds a touch of class with the 4 wood inserts. And although personally I am not a huge fan of the wooden trim, I do like the sense of quality it brings about in the Dzire. And the similarities continue in terms of interior tech too. On the top spec model, both get a large touchscreen, both get Android Auto, both get Apple CarPlay, and both get inbuilt navigation. Both also get your run-of-the-mill Bluetooth, and the Amaze even gets an extra USB charging point, which in today's day and age is extremely handy. Oh, and another really cool feature that we found on the Amaze, a speed limit indicator on the navigation system. While a lot of owners actually do drive these cars themselves, there are a lot of owners who also sit in the back seat and let a chauffeur drive or a driver drive them around. Now, my colleague Pratik there has been very gracious enough to adjust the seats according to his driving preference. What we're going to do is get into the back of both these cars and see which one has more space, which one is more comfortable, and which one has more features. Now remember, both these cars are on relatively newer platforms which are there to ensure that the rear seat comfort and rear seat space has been optimized. So let's get into the Amaze first and see how that fares, and then let's get into the Dzire and see which one has more space. Alright then, first the Amaze. Now, most sub-4 meter compact sedans now today in the country, or most hatchbacks in the country, have been made so that they do provide a lot more leg space than their previous generations, because a certain few cars did have a genuine rear space problem, and the Amaze is pretty spacious. If I do sit in my position, and Pratik has of course adjusted the seats to his position, there's still about 4 or 5 inches of leg room to play around with. You do get a flip down center console with some cup holders. What the Amaze does lack, and that's especially evident in the summers here, is a rear AC vent. That would have been a real big advantage for the new Amaze to have, and that is sadly missing. Now that we're done with the Amaze, let's get into the Dzire. Let's see if that is actually larger. Alright then. Now this is a completely new platform for Maruti Suzuki. It's based on the same platform that the Baleno is, and of course the Baleno is very spacious at the back. This one isn't too bad either. In fact, it's got a little more leg room than the Amaze does, a little more wiggle room, and that's even though the seats aren't really contoured as much as the Amaze is. This of course also has larger seats up front, which makes it a little more comfortable to drive. Now the big advantage, especially again in the heat, it does get AC vents at the back, and even though they are a little lower and they're a little small as compared to some of the other cars in the segment or a segment higher, they do the job really well, because at the end of the day they do blow in some air, which gives a little bit of respite to rear seat passengers. So in the rear seat department, the Dzire is a definite winner because it's got more space, the rear AC vent, and it's just a little bit more comfortable and plusher. And of course it is wider because the body is wider and the interiors are wider too. Time now to hit the road, and the first thing we should talk about, especially considering the ridiculous fuel prices in India, is of course fuel economy. Both these diesel-powered subcompact sedans are quite thrifty when it comes to sipping fuel. But while the Amaze offers 27.4 kilometers per litre according to ARAI test results, the Dzire offers a little more at 28.4. Familiarity. A sensation that a lot of us actually take for granted, but one that the Dzire gives us back in spades. We're so used to driving this car and this platform and that engine across the length and breadth of the country, this almost feels second nature to us. We're so familiar with it, we're so familiar with the way it makes power, and so is most of the country, because this of course is one of the most popular engines sold in India. Now, my favorite part about the Dzire and about this engine in particular is the fact that you have all that top-end performance in the rev range. Past 3000 RPM, when most diesel engines taper off, the Dzire keeps going, the multi-jet engine keeps going, and it actually makes power to about 4000, 4500, maybe even slightly higher up in the rev range, and that's all usable power. Once you do actually learn to hold the Dzire by the scruff of its neck and make it perform, it does perform, it does reward you. The new Dzire is based on the Hardtech platform, the same that also underpins the Baleno, Ignis and the new Swift. It is light and nimble, and of course stronger than the Dzires of the past, and that is a good thing. Ride and handling are both very much on point as they've always been, and steering feedback is fantastic too. So what about the Amaze? Has the new platform brought about a drastic change in dynamics? Now where the Dzire feels extremely familiar to drive, the Amaze on the other hand feels a lot more powerful because, well, it just is. The last generation Amaze was more powerful as compared to the last generation Dzire, and that trend continues in the new Amaze too. In terms of horsepower, 99 compared to 74 on the Dzire, and in terms of torque, the Amaze makes 200 Newton meters of torque as compared to 190 on the Dzire. So a little bit more powerful in both terms, and it just translates to on-road performance because the Amaze does feel a lot quicker to drive, especially in that mid-range performance that you actually need in the city or while overtaking somebody. Power between 1500 and 3000 RPM just comes in a surge, and the problem with the Amaze, as was the problem with the last generation Amaze, was that if you rev beyond 3000 RPM, that power does tend to taper off really quickly, and that has always been a strong suit of the Dzire. It does have a little better top-end power as compared to the Amaze does. The big improvement though, and the one that really genuinely has impressed me, is the fact that Honda has worked so hard to improve the NVH levels on the Amaze. That was one of the big problems that we had on the last generation. We all spoke about it, we all complained about it, and now they have actually gone and fixed it, making it a much quieter car to drive. And if you have the music on a little bit, you really genuinely can't hear that engine almost at all. between the Amaze and the Dzire. While both certainly are almost on par when it comes to handling, the Amaze does perform considerably better in the ride department quality, partly again due to the fact that overall NVH levels and not just engine noise are a lot lower too. This is one of those tough comparisons. It really is. Both cars are very similarly priced. For the diesel manual, the Amaze starts at 6,69,000 rupees for the base model and tops off at 8,67,000 rupees for the fully loaded version. The Dzire is slightly more affordable at the lower end, with prices starting at 6,56,000 going all the way up to 8,96,000 rupees. While the Amaze ticks the boxes when it comes to engine performance, ride and handling and cabin features, the Dzire wins on fuel economy, interior space and, in my personal opinion, overall design too. Honestly, this one is just too close to call.
Yes, hello. What's it going to be? You spend enough time with both cars now, I think.
You know, they're so evenly matched, these two manual diesels, on price, on features. The Dzire has a few things going.
What are you saying?
I think for the first time I'm actually confused between which one is better.
They're
both, yeah, after a long time, I think they're both very, very close. They both have attributes that are positives and negatives, but
yes, one of the most strongly opinionated people on our team is stuck. Wonderful. I have a way to, I think, resolve your dilemma. Please come. I haven't driven in the twin of your car. It's actually got a little difference. You know what it is. Diesel CVT, not just CVT.
Yes.
So, pushes you over the edge.
You know, the automatic stuff, of course, getting more and more popular. That has the AMT.
It's a good AMT too.
Great AMT. But I have driven the CVT earlier today. A lot more refined. And even though it's a little bit lower on power than the manual is, it does push me over the edge, yes.
So,
as a whole model range comparison.
So as most of you regulars would know, we're not the cliched variety who always says the new car is the winner. But in this case, it deservedly is.
Although, can I do say that it needs a higher spec variant?
The CVT for sure does. Yes, that's our big grouse. And that's happening more and more where the automatics aren't fully spec'd on equipment. We hope Honda does that, maybe in time for the festive season at least. But for now, see, I've come in and helped your decision.
Range,
you want to drive the CVT?
I do.
Okay, go for it.